Okay, so for our physics project, we chose a scene from Lord of the Rings, specifically the opening scene to the Two Towers. So you might look at this picture and say, okay, well, what's going on? So to start things off, this big red dude right here, he's kind of pissed off, because Gandalf just made him fall for a really long time. So he's been falling for about, let's say, 15 seconds. At that time, he takes this big red whippy thing and wraps it around Gandalf's leg right there. Gandalf, because of that, drops his sword and starts hanging onto this ledge right here. So, as I said, Balrog starts falling. 15 seconds later, Gandalf drops his sword, right? Now, Gandalf, 15 seconds after he drops his sword, lets go of the ledge and starts falling as well. Because of that, all three objects are in free fall, initially 15 seconds away from each other. So the question is, can Gandalf catch up to the sword as seen in the movie? And even further, can Gandalf catch up to the Balrog? And then, assuming he can catch up to all of them, will they live when they land a minute and 15 seconds later? Or, sorry, a minute later. Okay, so if we look at the equations pertinent to Gandalf, we see distance is defined as acceleration times time squared times a half. So if I work that out, distance equals negative 9.8 meters per second squared, which is the acceleration he would be going in a free fall, times 15 seconds squared, which is the time when he caught the sword, times a half. You get that distance is equal to about 1,102.5 meters. So there's that. Now, if I go back and erase this, we can calculate velocity at times 60 seconds, which is when he hit the water with the Balrog. And then we can get the velocity to determine if he could have lived through the fall. So, velocity equals acceleration, which is negative 9.8 meters per second squared, times 60 seconds. That would give you that his velocity is about 588 meters per second, which is equivalent to about 1,315.32 miles per hour. If we go back and look at the sword, it would be the same equation for distance. So distance equals acceleration times time squared times a half. And since we decided that the sword started falling 15 seconds before Gandalf, we can say that negative 9.8 meters per second squared times 30 seconds squared, since the sword started falling 15 seconds before Gandalf, times a half, should give you a value for 4,410 meters. Now, at that time, Gandalf had only traveled 1,102.5 meters. So this shows that they should not be at the same place at the same time. Well, finally, for the Balrog, we know that it started falling a good 30 seconds before Gandalf. So if we use the same equation, distance equals 1/2 times the acceleration, which is negative 9.8 meters per second squared, times what would be 45 seconds, since Gandalf, we said, started falling at 15, 45 seconds squared, then we would get a value for 9,922.5 meters. So there you can see that if Gandalf started falling at 15, and we took them at the same times, that they would not be at the same place at the same time, which means Gandalf could not have caught up to him. So let's erase that, and we can find out the Balrog's velocity at the bottom of the fall. Okay, so we see velocity equals acceleration, which again is negative 9.8 meters per second squared, times the time, which is 60 seconds, because that's the time it took them to fall, which this might start looking familiar because it's the same exact one we used for Gandalf. So the velocity is the same at 1,315.32 miles per hour. In wraps, the initial questions posed were, number one, can Gandalf catch up to the sword and then the Balrog? That came back as no, because at any given time, they were all different distances through their fall. So we said Gandalf was falling for 15 seconds, and he traveled 1,102.5 meters, while if the sword had been falling for 15 seconds before that at 30 seconds, it had traveled 4,410 meters, and the Balrog at 45 seconds, which when it started falling would make sense, had traveled 9,922.5 meters. So that answer is no. The second question we asked is, can Gandalf or the Balrog survive the fall? It came back, they were both falling at 1,315 miles per hour when they hit the water. Now, at that speed, because of surface tension, you can almost compare water to a slab of concrete, give or take. So, since water tension at that speed is almost comparable to concrete, if somebody was to hit it at even 100 or 200 miles per hour, it would probably be enough to kill them. So the answer is no, Gandalf and the Balrog cannot survive that hit.